No, I've never been canyoneering before, but Keyhole Canyon, rated a 3B, was a hell of a place to get my feet wet. So now that desert season is in full swing, the guys and I wanted to go canyoneering down in Zion. So with the girls and the dogs all in the trucks, we headed down south for the weekend. We were camped just outside of Zion National Park on some BLM land called Gooseberry Mesa, and not only is it great for camping, but it's also incredible mountain biking. So before we headed into the park to go canyoneering, we wanted to check out a few of the trails, and oh man, were they epic. So we ended up on this black rated trail called South Rim Trail, and we far from conquered it, let's just say that. But don't worry, because we'll be back to ride it again, because it was so epic. Honestly, the best part was at the end of the ride when we saw a tarantula. I've never seen one before, and this thing was huge. If that doesn't give you nightmares at night, then I don't know what does.
Ah, he's gonna hit you, man!
After our ride, we loaded the trucks up again with our canyoneering gear and headed into the park to meet up with Brett and Alex. They were the ones that secured the permit for this so that we could actually do it. Once we got in there, I don't think any of us were prepared for the amount of traffic and the crowds that were in Zion. So eventually, after waiting in the traffic, we finally hit the trailhead, threw our wetsuits on, and then headed up the trailhead. The approach, I'm not gonna lie, was like really difficult. It was really steep, and wearing a thick wetsuit only made it worse. I was like sweating immediately. But once we reached the hoodoos at the top, it was a good trail marker. We headed down into the gully on the other side where the entrance of the canyon is. So then we zipped up our wetsuits and descended down into the canyon. And at first, it was really easy. I mean, it was just like kind of walking down a thin slot canyon, a little bit of down climbing and stemming, and no ropes were required. Eventually the slot canyon opens back up, and this part's called the middle keyhole, and then it closes back in at the first rappel station, and that's when the fun starts happening. This is a narrow slot where you actually have to rappel about 15 feet down into a pool. This was easily the trickiest one. It's called the lower keyhole, but fortunately for us, the pool was dry. After that, we headed down the canyon into the second drop, where you have to kind of crawl under a big tree that's lodged in the middle of the slot canyon, and then use an old piece of webbing to drop you into a pool. And this time it was full of water, and it was really, really cold. But it wasn't too bad because I was sweating a ton, so the water, the ice cold water, was much of a reprieve. The next drop was a steep vertical rappel, just about the same distance as the first one, into another dry pool, or I guess so we thought. There was a bit of stagnant water remaining, and it just smelled horrendous. Seriously, like sewage. So we didn't want to stick out there for long and made it down to the last wrap. It was definitely the most unique rappel in the canyon. It's more of like an assisted down climb, down a really smooth slide into another pool that you really have to try to avoid at the very end. And after we got everybody down, we put the rope away because we were into the last section, the swim. Or for us, it was a knee-deep trudge through some pretty cold water. If you couldn't tell by now, we did not have the same experience that a lot of people have with Keyhole Canyon. Mostly every pool is filled with water, and you're always in water, it seems. For us, I think we wish we had more water. It was a little too hot for us, but I guess there just hasn't been a lot of rain, so... Quickly after, we emerged from the exit of the canyon, just fueled by stoke, and I couldn't believe how awesome of an experience it was, especially for my first time. It only took us a little bit over an hour, but I wish it lasted longer, to be honest. So then we headed back to camp to meet up with the girls for dinner, and I couldn't help but feel this growing excitement for this new sport that I can't wait to get into. because it's just another way to experience the desert and all the places I love about it and access these inaccessible points. So yeah, I can't wait for my next canyoneering trip. And I cannot recommend the Keyhole Canyon enough. It was a great experience, and if you can rappel, you can do this canyon.